Hello, I'm going to do an extra practice run on an ANCOVA using the homework data set that we've been using. And for this practice run, I am going to look at clinical symptoms as an IV, religious coping style as a second independent variable, and depressive symptom severity as a covariate, with hope as the dependent variable. So the first thing you're going to do is just look at missing data, and we know we have a good bit of it with hope. So we have about 20 people missing the hope variable. And we could divide that by things, but I think that's the only thing missing in this data set. So that's just the first thing to check, and we're not going to replace that or anything. We're just going to leave it. So looking at the N of the cells, I'm going to look at that when I run explore. So I'm going to go ahead and run explore to find outliers by stem and leaf plot. So for that, we're going to do descriptives, explore, and our research question is symptoms. That's one of our factor or IVs. Religious coping is the second one, and hope is our third one. Whenever you're doing an ANCOVA and you're looking at these, there's no place to put the covariate right now. So we don't check anything on the covariate for this, for like outliers and skew by group. So just make sure outliers is checked off. You can do more if you want to, but this will give us what we're looking for, which right now is really just stem and leaf plots because we're looking for outliers and unequal N. So unequal N, right here, we can see we have 100 non-clinical people with a hope score and 80 clinical with a hope score. And it looks like all 20 of our missings on hope are in the clinical group, right? So whatever reason. So that's that piece. I'm going to scroll down and look for a stem and leaf plot. For this, what I see is I have two extremes on the low end, 15 or lower, in the non-clinical group, right? So I actually have, you can see, written it down on my thing here to keep track of it. And then one extreme that's scoring 95 or higher in hope in the non-clinical group. Okay. And then I have one extreme scoring 5 or lower in the clinical group, and one extreme scoring 95 or higher in the clinical group. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 outliers sitting here with this part of it. Now we're only looking at 1 IV with 1 DV here. So I'm going to go ahead also and look at the second IV. So scrolling on down, now we have religious coping with hope, right? That has 3 groups. And for this, we've got missing data in all 3 of the groups. It's 59, 59, 62, where we have both the coping in information and the hope score. We have these 9, 7, and 4 who are missing the hope score, basically. And that's what it looks like to begin with before missing data. So across the board, we have some missing data. And while it does look like we have, more clinical missing data than non-clinical, we're going to go forward and just report that. That's just information. And then for outliers, for this one, we find we have one extreme score of 15 or lower. That's familiar. We had 15 in the last group too. They may be the same case. And then we have one extreme scoring 95 or higher. Again, that number 95 showed up in the other IV also. So that's interesting. We have one extreme 95 or higher in the neutral group, and we have 2 extremes of 5 or lower in the positive group. Okay. So once you've identified your outliers in stem and leaf, then we need to switch back over here and we need to find them. So you have a lot of ways to do this. One way is to just sort hope and then sort religious cope, or let's sort clinical symptoms first. And then what happens is hope stays in an order and all the non-clinicals together and all the clinicals together. So what I found, and I have written down on my little piece of paper so I don't have to go back and forth, I have 2 that are scoring 15 or lower in the non-clinical group. So I'm going to delete those. and I have one scoring 95 or higher. There's the 95. Yes, it's still non-clinical. I'm going to get rid of that. That's an outlier. Okay, then I go to the clinical group and I've got one scoring 5 or lower, and I've got 95. Should be all the way down here, right? And generally you just get rid of the hope one because you don't need to get rid of everything. Just the hope. If hope is out, if dependent variable is out, then it won't be analyzed anyway. All right, we're going to go through though and check and make sure that those other outliers found on the stem and leaf plot for negative, neutral, and positive religious coping aren't still in here. So I'm going to sort ascending on this again, and then I'm going to sort by religious coping style this time. And then for negative, we're supposed to have one that's a 15 or lower. You can see it's already gone, right? We got rid of it in the last grouping. It's already been removed. So that's good. And we should have 195 unless it's been removed, right? And it looks like it has. There's no 95 here. All right, so for neutral, it says there's a 95 in neutral too. Going through, nope, there's no 95 in the neutral group, right? The highest is 73, so we must have already gotten rid of it as well. And then for positive, it says we should have 2 scoring 5 or lower. I got nothing below 27. So what we're finding is the outliers for clinical symptoms and the outliers for religious coping are the same outliers. They're showing up both times. Sometimes they won't show up both times. Sometimes you'll get one in one and it won't show up in the other one or something. So you do have to check both stem and leaf plots and get rid of both things. So we got rid of a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cases now. So we could like sort this. And now what do we have left in terms of our database? We have 175 participants now left that we can analyze once we got rid of that. Okay, now because we got rid of some outliers, we're going to have to run explore again to look at the skew values. So normality would be the next thing on our checklist. So to do that, I'm going to hit analyze and descriptives and explore, all right? And I'm running the same thing again. Nothing's changing. I have to do both of them. I'm going to be looking for skew values. I'll make this a little bit bigger. This is the Explorer that I just ran to make sure I'm in the right place. And I'm looking for skewness. So skewness for non-clinical is negative 0.059. And skewness for clinical is negative 0.315. So we're fine right there. Okay. I'm going to go down. And remember, you never do stem and leaf plots twice. You do it one time and then you're done. All right. So my negative religious coping skewness is 0.256. I'm good. My neutral skewness is negative 0.226, looking good. And my positive religious coping skewness is negative 0.452. Excellent. We are all covered in terms of the IVs and DV, in terms of skewness and normality. But we have an extra thing in an ANCOVA, and that is the covariate has never been examined to see if it's skewed. So we need to run just a plain old descriptive to see if the covariate is skewed all on its own. So we're going to go over here to descriptives, and our covariate is depressive symptom severity. And I want to make sure I'm getting skewness and kurtosis. There's actually a couple of ways to do this. If you've been using another way, that's fine, as long as you get skewness and kurtosis value. Okay, so I click that. And what do I get? A skewness of 1.231. Oh, no. Okay, so that's not acceptable. So it is a positive skew, so we don't need to do the whole K minus thing. So for this, we're going to compute, and I'm going to do the square root of depressive. And I'm going to find square root, send it up, and then I'm going to find depressive and send it over. Okay, square root depressive matches square root depressive. Everything looks good. Click OK. All right, I got a new column over here now. All right, but I need to check and see if that fixed it. So I'm going to go in here and run that descriptive again. I like to just send it over, like leave it and send it over. I'll have my original and I'll have my square root. And oh no, you gotta be kidding me. It's 1.010. It's barely over. Yep, can't round this. Got to do it over. So we got to do the log 10. All right, here we are. So I'm gonna reset. Then I'm gonna do the LG10 depressive and under arithmetic, log 10, send it out, send depressive symptoms over right there. And log 10 matches everything. Okay. And run it one more time. And let's see if we fixed it now. Log 10 of depressive. Okay. And yes, it now fixes it. Okay, I'm going to go in over here and erase the square root because that didn't fix it and I don't want to get myself confused in the future. So right now I have done normality of the DV by group and I have done normality of the covariate, right? So the next assumption to check is homogeneity regression. This is the new one that's kind of funky. So I'm going to walk us through it. Okay. So analyze, and we're going to GLM, general linear model, univariate. For here, we're going to set us up. So hope is our DV, symptoms is an IV, and so is religious coping. And then log 10 of depressive is our covariate. But to check homogeneity regression slopes, we need to go in here and trick the system. So under model, I'm going to click on build terms. I'm going to send over each of these in order. 1, 2, 3, just like that. Then I'm going to hold down my control key or my little hashtaggy looking key on a Mac and send it over so that it looks like that. It does have to be in that order and it has to look exactly like this or you'll get the wrong answers, right? So we're basically running a little trick on the SPSS. So clinical symptoms, religious coping, LG depressive, and then the interaction of the three with each other, and click continue. We don't need anything else right now because all we really need is the regression slopes. So I'm going to click OK. And looking in here, the only thing I need to look at is the interaction of all three of them together. So it's the covariate interacting with the two independent variables all together. And right there, I get a significance of 0.223, which is great. It's not significant, which means we pass the assumption. So if you had to write this out, you would be saying, I passed the assumption. It's 5, 165. F equals 1.41, P equals 0.22. And that's my evidence to show that I have passed the homogeneity regression assumption. If, however, this number had been less than 0.05, what do? At that point, you are going to go back and you're not going to use the covariate. You're going to get rid of it. Right? You can't use the covariate if this assumption is violated. Right? You have to throw the covariate out. So remember that information. All right, but because it's not we're good because we passed the assumption, we get to keep the covariate. Yay! Just what you always wanted, to keep a covariate. All right, we have one more assumption to check, and that's Levine's test, but we're going to test that within the actual ANOVA itself. So now we got to go back and run the real ANOVA. All right, so here's the real ANOVA. Big step here. Do not forget this one. You have got to change the model back to full factorial or everything will be wrong from here on out, okay? So make sure after you've run the regression slopes, you go back and you change it. This is the real regression, all right? Again, if we violated regression slopes, we'd be getting rid of the covariate right now, but we didn't, so we get to keep it, all right? I like to do plots, and my way as a professor is actually doing both ways. So you can see clinical symptoms by religious coping or religious coping by clinical symptoms. That way I can kind of look at it both directions and see what the picture looks like on the plot there. Post-hoc is blacked out and that's okay. We're going to get the EM means. For EM means, you just send red rover everybody over. We're going to look at main effects and simple main effects, and our confidence interval adjustment is going to be Bonferroni. All right, so send everybody over on EM means, click both boxes and change it to Bonferroni, click continue. Okay, and then under options, we need our homogeneity, our Levine's test, we want descriptives and effect size. All right, and lots of other fancy things here, but your book doesn't do it, so we won't either. And we'll click OK. All right, this is my real ANOVA. You can put up here Seems like the real ANOVA, and oh, it didn't do that, but it's over here at least. I think you can write in here too. It starts here, so if it helps you, you can go in there and do a little writing. All right. So here I am. I'm not generally going to ask you this, but one of the things to look for is like making sure your ends don't get too terribly small there. So they're looking pretty good. Okay, Levine's test though, that was the thing that we were looking for, and we want it to not be significant, and it's not. Levine's test is 0.912, which is fantastic. So what you would report there is F parentheses 5,169 equals 0.30, P equals 0.91. And that's your evidence to show that Levine's test is not significant. It has passed that assumption. We have passed all our assumptions now. The only thing we had to do was transform our covariate. So we can now actually look at the real deal. All right. This here test between subjects effects, that's our main results. All right. Of everything. We have 3 F tests here that we need to look at. Our interaction, we're going to go from the bottom up. Interaction, main effects, and then you can glance at the covariate. So the interaction is not significant, 0.770. All right, make sure when you're doing this, you don't mix up sig, which is your p-value, and your partial eta squared, that's your effect size, right? So make sure you're watching close. So you'd be reporting that as 2,168, F equals 0.26, P equals 0.77, partial eta squared equal 0.003. And that tells you that the interaction, not significant. And the main effects of religious coping on hope, also not significant. And the main effects of clinical symptoms on hope, also not significant. It's not unusual for the covariate to be significant. It's really just kind of a peek at the data anyway. It's not real data because that's a continuous variable. So this kind of gives you a sense. Now, because all 3 of these are not significant, we would not go forward from here. We would just report it, say nothing is significant. This was a made-up data set anyway. So here we are, and that's the end. Anything that's not significant, you don't go forward, right? So if the interaction's not significant, you don't look at the interaction means and their comparisons. If the main effect's not significant, you don't look at their main effect, kind of mean scores and seeing if they're pairwise going to be significant or not. So I'm going to do something just for the sake of learning, and let's pretend we had gotten significance here. Like, what do we do next? Just to make sure you guys get a little training. So here's our mean scores adjusted for the covariate. So you see the little word covariate right here. This is our covariate mean adjusted score. Somewhere way back up here is our actual mean scores of them. And you're going to have to like hunt all the way back up here to find it. That's just the mean score without the covariate adjusting for it. So I'll let you guys do that. But back to our things, but that's where you find your covariate adjusted dependent variable mean score on hope. All right. So that's clinical, non-clinical. We've got clinical is higher than non-clinical. This one just has 2 groups. So if this main effect on clinical symptom had been significant, we would just report the mean. Clinical is higher in hope than non-clinical. It's not significant, which kind of makes sense since it's only like 0.5 difference. That's what we have. All right. You can you can look right here and see it should back that up. But again, only 2 groups, so we really don't need to do much else. Here is our covariate adjusted dependent variable scores for the 3 groups of religious coping, right? So you can see like neutral is highest in hope and positive and negative are almost the exact same score. They're very close. Because we have 3 groups, we would have had to do the pairwise comparison here, all right? Now, again, it wasn't significant and it's still like, I don't know why SPSS does this. It's not possible for SIG to be 1.0000, but it does that. So basically it's not significant. But if they had been, you'd have to look through these and see if negative versus neutral is significant and negative versus positive is significant and neutral versus positive is significant, right? And then the rest of them are a repeat. So you have to go down here and see if they are significant from each other. And sometimes you'll get like one and is and the other 2 aren't. Or sometimes all 3 are significant. Just depends. So that is your main effect for the three groups there. That's where you would find it, and you would look that up to see if you have, this is your post hoc, to see if you have it. And you can see right here, you even see it says Bonferroni right down there. That's your Bonferroni post hoc pairwise comparison. All right. If our interaction had been significant, one of the things to look for to find the interaction in the output is this little star right here. So you can see it's clinical symptom versus religious coping, right? And so you can see they're both here. So this is telling me this is my interaction data. So there's my interaction mean scores, right? So it's non-clinical and negative religious coping. So those are the people that are in that little group. They got that mean, and the people who are non-clinical and neutral coping, that's them, and non-clinical positive coping, that's them. Clinical negative, clinical neutral, clinical positive, right? So you've got 6 groups here. It's a 2x3 factorial ANOVA, so we have 6 groups. And this, of course, is your adjusted, covariate adjusted dependent scores. All right. Again, they weren't significant, so we're not going to expect to find anything here. But this is where you would look. And what it does is it should do it in 2 different directions. This one first clustered it by religious coping and then compared the 2 clinical symptom cutoffs. So for negative religious coping, if you compare non-clinical to clinical, that's where you find out if they're significant. And then when you just the people in the neutral coping group compare non-clinical to clinical, are they different from each other? And then we'll just take the people just in the positive religious coping group, non-clinical to clinical, and that's their number. Again, nothing is, but if we had a significant F test and we were really looking at this significant interaction F test, then we would be going like, okay, which one? Where is it? Right? So this is one direction where you first you group it, cluster it by one IV and then compare it on the other IV levels. But if you go down here, you'll see it the other way. So this is still clinical symptom by religious coping, right? It's got the same 6 mean scores. This one instead first does it by non-clinical and clinical first, you see that. And then it compares negative versus neutral, negative versus positive, neutral versus positive, right? And then for the clinical group, negative versus neutral, negative versus positive, neutral versus positive. And that would cover all of the comparisons possible. And you can look over here and see them. Okay, we have survived. We have survived. Here's our pictures. So nothing is significant here, but it's interesting where it all sits and trends. And it makes sense because the range is only from, like, the means only range from about 49 to 51. That's a really small difference in the group. So we just don't get a lot. And then this is the other way of looking at it, where you have the 3 groups here and 2 lines. So this one has 2 groups and 3 lines. It's the same exact data. This one is 3 groups on the bottom on the x-axis and 2 lines. And sometimes it's helpful just to kind of look at it both directions and see what it looks like. All right, you have survived. And I hope that that was helpful to understand how to do an ANCOVA from beginning to end using the homework file that we've been using. Hope it's helping. Bye.